When the cowboy Ethan Ward rode into the dusty frontier settlement of Red Mesa, he expected nothing more than a place to water his horse and get a night's rest. He was heading for the mining towns, where danger and loneliness were just part of the job. What he didn't expect was to be summoned straight into the mansion of the most feared man in the territory, boss Calder. The moment Ethan stepped into the saloon, Calder's men spotted him. Whispers followed, speaking of the cowboy who once fought off a band of raiders all by himself and lived to tell the tale. It turned out boss Calder wanted that kind of man. Ethan followed the guards through the ranch, noticing it felt less like a home and more like a fortified outpost. Iron-braced beams, restless horses, and armed men pacing every corner. Inside, boss Calder sat at a long, polished table, his face carved from age, anger, and absolute authority. Without so much as a greeting, he told Ethan he needed a protector for his daughter. A girl he called too unfortunate-looking to find a husband and too rebellious to stay safe. If Ethan agreed to marry her, Calder promised him land, cattle, and a future most cowboys never even dared to dream about. Then Calder leaned forward, his voice cutting like a knife. "Marry my ugly daughter or leave." Silence filled the room. Ethan couldn't tell if Calder was joking, threatening, or just testing him. He wasn't the marrying type, but he also wasn't a man who backed down from a challenge. He had to know more. He asked why Calder needed him specifically. Calder explained that his daughter had been raised partially among the Apache, hidden away years ago after raiders attacked the ranch. Her time with the tribe, he claimed, made her strong-willed, unrefined, and difficult. Suitors were afraid of her. Calder insisted that only a man with Ethan's kind of courage could handle her. But Ethan sensed a lie buried deep beneath the story. Still, refusing a man like Calder could mean disappearing into the desert. So he agreed to only one thing: he would meet the girl first. Calder accepted far too quickly. And in that moment, Ethan knew this wasn't a proposal, it was a trap, wrapped in desperation. The next morning, they rode out with Calder's armed men surrounding Ethan. They weren't escorts. They were reminders of who was in charge. The trail cut through old battlegrounds, a stark reminder of the conflicts between settlers and tribes. When they finally arrived at the Apache camp, Ethan understood the truth. Calder wasn't arranging a marriage. He was forcing two worlds together. The Apache chief greeted Calder stiffly, as if old debts still hung heavy in the air between them. Calder ignored him and demanded his daughter. She stepped forward slowly, dressed in traditional Apache clothing, her black hair long and loose, her posture proud. Half her face was covered with a ceremonial bandana. Ethan didn't see an ugly daughter. He saw a guarded, quiet woman with storm-filled eyes that no one had ever bothered to understand. Calder pushed for a marriage ritual right there on the spot, claiming it was the safest way to protect her from imagined enemies. The Apache were uneasy, but the chief seemed to agree for her safety. As Ethan stood facing her, Calder's voice echoed, "Lift the veil. Accept your choice." The Apache warriors shifted, watching every move closely. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze in that camp. He reached out and slowly raised the bandana. What he saw stole his breath. She wasn't ugly, not even close. She was striking. Her features were sharp, yet soft, her expression fierce, yet wounded. Her eyes were full of intelligence and secrets. She was nothing like Calder had described. Nothing like the rumors. Before Ethan could even speak, she whispered, her voice barely audible, "Don't trust the man who brought you here." In that single moment, Ethan understood. He wasn't here to save her. He was just a pawn in a game far darker than he could have imagined. Calder tried to push the ceremony forward, but the Apache chief stepped between them. No ritual would happen, he declared, unless the woman agreed to it herself. Calder tried to intimidate him, but the Apache warriors stepped closer, their message clear. Finally, the girl spoke aloud, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "My name is Naelli," she said, "and I choose my own fate." Calder insisted she needed a husband for protection, claiming raiders were hunting her for land rights tied to her name. But Naelli's jaw tightened. The chief looked away, pained. Ethan had heard enough. He demanded the truth. Inside the chief's tent, everything finally came out. Years ago, after his ranch was attacked, Calder had hidden Naelli with the Apache. He promised them peace and support in return, but he never came back for her. Naelli grew up among the tribe, becoming strong and respected. Now, Calder wanted her back for one reason and one reason only: she legally owned massive land rights. If she married a man loyal to him, Calder could control everything through them. The people supposedly hunting her weren't raiders, they were Calder's rivals, trying to expose his lies. All Naelli wanted was freedom from Calder, protection for the Apache people who raised her, and a life she could live on her own terms. But they all knew Calder would never allow her to refuse. Suddenly, shouting erupted outside. Calder's men were trying to drag Naelli from the tent. Ethan moved first. In a blur of motion, he twisted the man's arm, forcing him to release her. Chaos exploded, rifles were raised, bows were drawn. Ethan stepped between both sides, his own weapon unholstered but pointed at the ground. He declared he wouldn't marry Naelli by force, and he wouldn't let Calder take her unless she chose to go freely. That's when Calder finally snapped. He ordered his men to seize her. But Naelli stepped forward, her voice strong and clear for all to hear. "I refuse your marriage. I refuse your control. I refuse to return with you." The Apache warriors closed ranks around her, a solid wall of protection. Calder drew his gun, his face twisted with rage. But Ethan was faster. He knocked the weapon aside, and the shot buried itself harmlessly in the dirt. In an instant, the Apache disarmed Calder's men, driving them back. Calder stood there, humiliated and defeated. He warned that, without him, both Ethan and Naelli would be hunted. But Ethan finally understood the real power dynamic. Calder needed Naelli far more than she would ever need him. The Apache chief declared Naelli free to choose her own path, now protected by the entire tribe. Ethan turned to her and asked what she planned to do next. Naelli looked out at the horizon, her expression calm and certain. "I'm going back to my land," she said. "I'll rebuild what he tried to steal."